Hello. First few people arriving and trickling in. Welcome to the webinar today. My name is Mark. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Qwilr, and very thrilled to be joined today for this wonderful webinar by Nam and Charlie. I'll give a bit more introductions to them in a minute as we sort of get going here, but we're just going to wait for a few people to sort of trickle in here. We've got our first 15 or so in the door. So we'll just wait as we sort of keep that ticking along. If you want to, actually, let's all jump in the chat. If you want to, please feel free to ping in the chat to everybody where you're dialing in from. I am dialing in from Sydney, Australia. Hello. Let us know where you're coming from. Yes, North Carolina, Central Coast. There we go. Hello, Katie from Texas, Brazil. Wow, it's always wonderful. Adelaide, Phoenix, Melbourne. It's always fantastic to see. Well, Nam's down in Melbourne. Oh, the Philippines as well. Fantastic. Hello. Welcome, everybody. We're absolutely thrilled to have you. It's always great. Philippines, Romeo, it's pretty early for you. Bravo. Thank you for joining. We're thrilled to have everybody join here, and I think let's I'm sure we'll have a few more trickle in, but let's start kicking things off. So as I said before, I'm Mark. I'm one of the co-founders here at Qwilr, and really thrilled to be joined by Nam and Charlie today. So I think there's a few reasons why we're excited today. The first is that we don't spend enough time at Qwilr talking about our wonderful customers and all the cool things that they do with Qwilr, and so I think it generally really is exciting for us to be able to sort of talk to two people and two teams who we think are doing really excellent things with Qwilr, have really interesting companies in their own right. If you look at Qwilr's customer base, again, let's say, I think from our side, we have a lot of companies that sort of look like Charlie's, product first tech companies, tech, software, IT, that sort of zone is a big area for Qwilr. And I think what Charlie is doing is super interesting as a company. You should all go check out Wiise. But also, I think their use of Qwilr and how they think about it is, I think, very relevant to a whole bunch of Qwilr customers. The other big segment that we have, though, is in professional services. And so Nam comes from Law Squared, which is a very modern, forward-thinking law firm and practice. And I think, whether it's accountants, lawyers, consultants, and consultants, I really mean in a very broad range of industries. There's amazing the sort of scope there. That's another huge area of that sort of professional services space at Qwilr Service. So we've sort of tried to find two really interesting companies, two wonderful Australian companies. I get to be provincial sometimes, to come in and sort of give us a chat about how they're using Qwilr and what they're thinking about and what challenges they faced and how they've sort of used it to do some interesting stuff. We're going to touch on other things as well. I think both of our participants have got really interesting backgrounds. And so we sort of might veer in a few other directions as we go along, which is totally fine and always very welcome. Welcome to Nam and Charlie. And I'm going to let you each introduce yourselves a little bit. So Charlie, I'll ask you to kick it off. Give us a little bit of an introduction to you, your career, and what led you to Wiise.
Sure, yeah. So Charlie, CEO of Wiise. Wiise is an Australian-based small and mid-market ERP company for anyone who's inventory based, so wholesale, distribution, manufacturing kind of companies. My background's been all tech, been in Australia about 15 years. Previously had an exit. We built the company, got acquired by Salesforce. That made me a VP at Salesforce for a while. I was MD of Dropbox for a while, did some VC stuff. And for the last couple of years, I've been running Wiise. So there you go.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I think Charlie is someone who I think, Qwilr, obviously we care a lot about sales teams. And I think like Charlie's got a whole bunch of interesting experience running teams, managing teams, coaching teams, being a leader in that space as well. Nam, mate, give us your story.
Thanks, Mark. Good day, everyone. My name is Nam, Head of Digital and Innovation at Law Squared. We are a law firm and a legal technology consultancy company. My background is similar to Charlie's, not as experienced, but across all things digital. Started my career as a human-centered designer, designing web pages, websites, workflows, change manager and commercialization manager. Rolled a digital platform to about 60,000 bankers in my time at ANZ, and was a product manager for a a large transaction banking mobile application. So taking those skill sets, and I have joined Law Squared as their head of digital and innovation, and largely responsible now for the digital transformation of the firm and business strategy when it comes to digital. So, hello.
Awesome. Two super interesting people, very like quite sort of interestingly like not uncommon types of backgrounds people we see at Qwilr, but it's like quite different as well. So anyway, guys, really thrilled to have you on. Really appreciate you taking the time. So before we kick off, if you have any questions as we go through this, feel free to throw them in either the webinar chat or in the Q&A. We're very happy to take them as we go. We're gonna have a bit of a Q&A time at the end as well, but I think we're all friends here, so feel free to drop them in and we'll have a chat. But let's kick it off. So we're going to dive into Wiise first. So Charlie, I think just sort of set the scene for us. So it's like Wiise is a a globally focused sort of mid-market ERP solution, but like give us sort of like where you are in that sort of journey as a business. Who some of your typical customers are, and like I suppose like what some of the big things that are on your brain as CEO.
Yeah, of course. So we're at the stage where we've got really good product market fit, and we're now building to probably what you'd call go-to-market fit, right? Which is how do you learn to scale the business and get more repeatable, and really work on your unit economics, your target customers, and get some really good repeatable sales processes. So we're sort of in that, in that sort of $5 to $10 million of revenue, recurring revenue range, right? Which is typically where you really go after the fine tuning of that go-to-market fit. So on the back of that, right? So think about when people buy an ERP solution, it's kind of like a bit of major surgery for people, because it's the business operating system at the end of the day. It's not just your basic finance and accounting, but it's everything else as well. So for a lot of our customers, it's everything. It's their operations, their payroll, their warehousing, their ability to generate product and send it to customers and generate revenue. So that selection process is fairly detailed and can be fairly complicated. But in the segment that we sell to, so we're sort of above zero, but sort of underneath much bigger things like SAP, and we sort of compete with the high end of some sort of online platforms, and then where we start to meet things like NetSuite. And the thing about our customers is they're typically sort of $50 million of revenue, maybe a little bit bigger in some cases, and they don't tend to have a lot of technology people on staff. So our sales process involves working with our delivery partners. So all of our delivery is done through service partners, and they do the implementation, because you can't self-implement ERP. You need an ERP specialist. And so those customers themselves, they're not so technology based that they can run like an RFP process like a big customer, right? That might have a CIO or a CTO. So really what you're dealing with the business owners. So often we're dealing with the CEO or the CFO, or even sometimes the head of logistics. So we've got to be really mindful in our sales process of the kind of people that we're talking to, and help them understand the benefits and help them select the right platform, the right partners to do the implementation, and where they actually want to go with everything here, right? Where they actually want to go with the entire platform. So that's probably, I'll pause there, Mark.
No, perfect. And I think like that's a wonderful setting the scene. And I think so you've got this like quite, I think it is quite a big purchase, like quite, I think one that can be a little bit stress inducing. There's lots of information people want to be across. People don't want to make the wrong choice here. They sort of want to sort of go down this path, but you've got many different stakeholders across the business who are going to be touched by this change that's coming through. And that's a hard sale. Like we're all sellers here, like that, that's a thing that I think does add some sort of complexity to it. So yeah, how when you sort of were looking at sort of those sort of sets of problems, and you were starting to evaluate things in the zone of Qwilr, like what were you looking to solve? What were some of the specifics you were looking for? And then like, whenever you're ready, mate, start letting us know how you went about solving them.
Yeah, right. So I mean, to be fair, we weren't in the market looking for something like Qwilr because we didn't know that was a solution, right? So what we were doing though was thinking about how we can curate the customer's journey better, right? So typically in a much larger organization, you'll go for an ERP solution is you'll run an RFP process or something similar to that, right? You'll have a bit of a team, you'll have a technology-led decision, you'll have stakeholders, a steering committee, and a whole load of stuff, right? But we're dealing with much smaller organizations, right? And typically our software ACV is sort of 15 to 20K, right? So you're not running an RFP process for that kind of buy.
Yep.
And the implementation can range anything from 15, 20K to a couple of hundred, depending on what you're doing and how many sites and warehouses you've got. So what we were looking to do was to try and help the customers document their journey in a really efficient way. And one of the things that was the catalyst for this is a book you can see just over my shoulder, actually. So I'm not doing this to plug the book, but it's just a good book, right? The Jolt Effect.
We like it too.
It's a good book, right? And it's written by the guys that originally did the bunch of primary research around Challenger Customer and things. And that came about that through the analysis of what happened to B2B sales. Oh, what was the book? It was called the Jolt.
I'll answer it.
Yeah,
It's
you
called
put it in the Jolt Effect. And so during the pandemic, like pretty much all B2B software sales went into like Zoom and Teams and Google and stuff. And what the side effect of that was it created, literally hundreds of thousands of hours of customer seller transcripts. And when you analyze those things, I think what had changed is not this fear of missing out, but the fear of messing up was really the primary driver for customers. Because I think we got used to with like Challenger selling is creating a false horizon, like, oh, there's a discount, but it's only until the end of the month, or the delivery partner's only got capacity until February, right? And really, the customers don't care. When they're making a selection about something as fundamental as the business operating system, it's more about the fear of messing up, the fear of screwing up, than it is missing out, right?
Yeah.
So what we got to there was then, okay, so how do we take risk off the table? And that's one of the big things in the Jolt framework, is how do you curate the journey and take risk off the table? So one of the things we tried to do was then, okay, the problem we're now trying to solve is how can we help the customer run a process so that when somebody says to me, why did you pick Wiise and not the other things, they've got a really nicely sort of written and curated set of documentation just for them that says, this was my journey, this was my decision process, this is why this is going to work for us. And then it's also a document to hand off to the next stage in the process, which would be the specification for the implementation. So that's where we got to, and then the sort of natural choice through a number of reasons was Qwilr, and we built something that we call the we still haven't given it a better name, but we call it the CCJ, the Customer Curated Journey. So, do you want me to show it? Do you want me to show the?
Yeah. We're doing live demos here, everybody. So we're gonna share screens and show off what people have built with Qwilr.
All right. Can you see that? Okay.
Perfect.
So what this is thinking, if you think about our journey with our customers, is like they haven't got the time or the skills or the resources to do an RFP, but it'd be really nice if we could have a lightweight thing that documented their journey. It's also really good for our sellers and partner account managers and our partners to have something that documents the process. So we've got, we have a whole template library of all kinds of things. And then when we start to do the discovery, so here's a sample one for this company called Wiise Sample Customer. The contact name's Apex, man. Great. And so we have some standard sort of boilerplate things that go in about the company, but then we start to fill in what we heard about you. What was the solution? Okay, there's some things that you do that's very specific to you, the challenges that you have, the impact that you're seeking. And then we do some introduction around Wiise itself. And we slowly add things to this document that are relevant for this particular customer. So one of the good things you can have in Qwilr is a whole load of items and set documents and resources, and you can slowly add them to the document. So as we go through the discovery phase, and we start to add the resources that make sense for that particular customer, we throw in some of the white papers. You can go and read these link out to white papers on our website. So when we get into the discovery phase, we start to click through and understand the pieces that make sense for them. And then case studies that just look like them. So instead of just bombarding the customer with, here's the case study website, here are the case studies of a business that looks just like you. It's either in the same industry or it's solving exactly the same problems. And then you can click through and you can read those full case studies.
And does that link out to your website?
Yeah,
Charlie?
so this one does. This one should just jump straight out. There you go.
Yeah, perfect.
Jumps out to our website. And you can go and you go and watch the video or download the full case study. The idea being is what we're doing here is we're just creating a subset of all our resources that are just relevant for this particular customer. This one particular customer had some problems in the past with an on-premise system. They'd had some cyber attacks and crypto lockers. So obviously we put everything that we do in around security, compliance, and trust for them. And then the really smart thing, even though we're not producing a proposal from this, is you can go through this area and go, okay, well, here's all the things that we can do in finance. Click the things that you want. We might do multi-currency, we might do bank feeds. That's pretty cool. And we get over to the warehousing section. We're going to do bins, we're going to do picks, we're going to do putaways. We're going to do multiple order shipments, and so on and so forth. So you can select the items that they need. And what this is actually doing is not really creating a proposal, but what it's doing is creating a snapshot of this discovery phase of what's important for this customer. So this means now that when we get to the partner selection piece, is we start to understand what's the most important things for this particular customer in their selection process. Is then we've got a document which is the handover of everything we know jointly in this journey between us and the customer to this point. Even we talk about risks and implementation. Couple more case studies. They go down to the bottom, and then they can store, copy, print, create a PDF, share it amongst their own organization. And in our sales bow tie, as we hand off then to the partner, that little bit we did around specifying what we want to have in these different sections here becomes the basis for the statement of work that then the partner will put together. Because sometimes when you're running a channel, the partners can vary quite considerably about how they see a customer's implementation. And sometimes, the one partner will quote $20,000 for a customer implementation, another partner might quote 80,000. And all that does is confuse the partner, right? Confuse the customer, because they've got no idea why there's this huge variance. But if we've captured a lot of this sort of scope and business benefits early, it makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to stop sharing that. So we're just in that early-ish journey with this, but what the feedback we are getting, particularly from the customers, is this is great, right? So I've got this document, which is a growing document, which is a snapshot in time that I can share with anybody, any stakeholder, and it explains why I'm making a good decision. And it's all about the customer. So yeah, it's interesting because I don't think it's a full use of Qwilr, because we don't do all the calculating proposals and everything, but it's just a capture of everything.
Well, it's interesting because you could imagine, and again, you use it however works for you, mate. But I think you could imagine in time adding for if you had smaller, more tending towards not self-serve customers, but sort of more straightforward customers in there. You could imagine a thing where you did add pricing on there, and they could build their own sort of, if there were sort of set blocks around building that sort of price on that side. It's a really nice way of using Qwilr to sort of very simply be have that sort of buyer engagement where both sides can have a bit of a back and forth and have an interaction on a page. As you say, it's a living document. So if they send you an email or have a call and they ask for more information, you can just go and add that extra block in, or add some extra text, or build that thing up. And again, it's a live web page that's open for everybody. Nam.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I love that, Charlie. And I love how that it is a scalable approach to that sales process as well. I know it's sort of the pre-sales, requirements, onboarding piece, but, as you talked about how you're sort of pitching to the 50 to 100 mil ARR, business, and you're generally pitching to the sole, the CEO, CTO, CEO, CFO, those type of stakeholders. But as you, transition into the more bigger clients, and what we found as well is that the decision makers change, right? And the people that you're having conversations with change, and that I see as a document that in the future will go to the CTO, who will then take that to the CFO and go through the official sort of internal process to pitch it internally to get that funding necessary to implement Wiise. So
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, it's good fun. So actually on our radar is turning on a bit of global product-led growth. And so you could see when people want to do a bit more kind of remote and asynchronous discovery with us, it's a great document. We're actually planning to build, that giving any commercial secrets away, a bit of a global product-led growth sales team, but out of Sydney, which is probably the worst unit economics you could think of. But anyway, we'll do it anyway.
You could build it out of San Francisco. Could be worse. Could be worse.
It could.
Okay, so I think just before we sort of wrap up here and jump over across to Nam. So Charlie, like how I mean, you sort of had a nice chat about like the impact on some of the customer experience there. I mean, how's the business sort of like, how have your team felt about using this? Has this enabled different parts of the team to sort of collaborate a bit better, or how's it sort of?
Yeah, so first of all, I mean, so we use Winning by Design as our go-to-market operating environment, and of course, the thing that sits behind that is the bow tie, right? So typical sales funnel tipped on one side, and then your onboarding, renewal, customer and partner life cycle on the other side.
Yeah.
So it's a great document that hands off through every stage throughout the bow tie. So that's superb for communication and for capturing things, because typically, you know, people are dreadful at putting notes into CRM systems, right? And this replaces all of that, and it's the lens of the customer. Where we have started to use it and we're starting to see some impacts, we're fairly early, it takes a little while to get into this, is it's shortening the sales cycle a little bit, right? Which is what we want to do, because what the problem is in anything B2B, like where we are, because it's not a burning platform, right? They're getting by on whatever they've got, right? And they can always probably get by for a little bit longer.
You can always push it out a month, you know. Yeah.
So the dearth of any B2B sales leader is all that late stage stalled out pipeline, right? That everyone forecasts is closing this month, this quarter, and it never does. It annoys everybody. And then you end up with this big false horizon of this big load of stalled out pipeline, right? But what we're doing with our implementation of the CCJ, which we do need a better name for, is using it to take risk off the table, shorten the sales cycle. And I think we talked about using things like the 15-month contract, right? So we talk about the implementation phase, it's only going to last 3 months. So instead of like locking in for multi-years of software, buy a 15-month contract. So you pay for 3 months now. And then once what we've documented in the CCJ gets implemented, then it automatically rolls into your first 12 months. Now, the thing about taking the risk off the table, we've done two things for the customer there. Is we've done a good job of documenting why they've made a good decision. And then they're only investing 3 months of their time and their money into the project before they're locked into a long-term piece. And that's kind of textbook comes out of how to do the jolt selling stuff. I mean, they don't mention 15-month contracts or Qwilr, but it's their good solution.
They should. Mate, that's wonderful. I think as we go on here, we're going to flip across to Nam now, but I think if you've got any questions about how Charlie's using Qwilr or anything to do with, I mean, frankly, I'm sure anything, Charlie's very happy to sort of to chat, I'm sure. Thank you, Tessa. But let's flip over to Nam. So Nam, let's sort of reset the table here a little bit. Tell us a bit about Law Squared. Tell us a bit about some of the problems and challenges you were sort of seeing that sort of started you on this journey.
Yeah. So we are a law firm at our core, and we were founded by our director, Dimitro, on the really simple but sometimes controversial opinion that the legal industry is broken, right? So we're a law firm that does things a little bit differently. And, you know, we have a very different operating cycle to other law firms. We price completely differently to other law firms, a completely fixed fee. You know, if anyone here has worked with lawyers before, you know that the most traditional way of working is through 6-minute increments, and they're billing you for every 6 minutes of work that gets done. We don't do that at all. We work off a fixed fee value priced arrangement. So there's no bill shock at the end. There's complete fee transparency. And we've been, you know, there's been a lot of, I guess, controversy with our model. You know, there's been a lot of more traditional legal advocates saying it doesn't work. Well, here we are, you know, 7 years later, we've hit that, you know, $5 to $10 million ARR part of our growth cycle. So it is working, right? And that's the reason why they brought me on board, is because we were at that stage in our business life cycle where we needed to start to think a bit more long term about our use of technology and what growth and scale looks like as we go through that that journey to take us from that 10 mil to the next sort of phase in our business. So when I came on, I sat down and did a mapping of our entire digital experience. So from the lawyers to the customers to the executives, what was happening and what was the experience like in the digital world. And we were using a sort of mismatch of digital tools that have just come to be because of how of how our business grew. So we started to think about, okay, well, what's our long-term strategy for our technology stack, or probably the better term for it is a technology ecosystem, right? So I sat down and I developed a strategy that is led by integrations. So having the best platforms, the best tools for our use cases and getting them to talk to each other. That was our core theme for our foundations, for the foundations of our use of technology. So we started to really just look in the market for all of the different tools that would meet our business workflow and would and our use cases. And last year was a complete end-to-end transformation of our business from a digital perspective. We threw out a bunch of old tools. We implemented Salesforce, we implemented Qwilr, we implemented SharePoint. They all talk to each other, which is surprisingly rare. But that's what we did, and Qwilr was a big part of that journey, and has been a really good way to showcase not just how innovative we are to our customers, but also to our staff as well. They get a really good feeling when they're using Qwilr. It's so simple, so intuitive. So I guess that for us, that really sums up our journey.
That's awesome, mate. You are a brave man to implement Salesforce and multiple other things at the same time. Let's dive in. I mean, I think you've got a really great sort of example doc to sort of talk us through, but sort of set the table for where those documents were, sort of when you arrived and what you were sort of trying to achieve here. Yeah,
sure. I'll show everyone what the journey was, and then I'll take through what it's become. And this is what we had, right? We had a really simple, just Word document that for every new client, every new proposal, we were just copying, pasting this Word document into the file, and then going through changing the items. And especially if you go down here to this table, and once you start to change a table in Word document, and especially if you're a lawyer who isn't technically technically mature in a sense, it starts to get really frustrating, right? So this was the process we had that we were then sending to our customers, right? So we were sending this document to our customers. We would get them to say, yes, we would love to go with option A for this price point. And then we would send them another contract to sign. So we were sending them 2 documents, waiting days in between for them to action on their end, as is their right, and getting back a signed version of a proposal document that that wasn't really adding any additional value to us or to the customer. So the core themes that I was looking at when we looked at this process and we reviewed this process is, firstly, how can we make it easier to generate a document for our lawyers? And secondly, how can we make that experience for the customer a lot better, right? Obviously, we all know the different products out there, the DocuSigns, the Adobe Signs, those were part of our evaluation. And what we do at Law Squared is we take a use case based evaluation process. So we don't start with a piece of technology and we we try and fit it in. We start with a particular use case or a series of use cases, and we're trying to find a piece of tech that solves for that. So what we did was we looked around, and what I realized is that these DocuSign, Panda Docs, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it on the recorded webcast, but
you can. I mean, you made the right choice, buddy. You can say whichever names you want.
It was really just presenting in a web page, in a web page HTML5, a Word document, right? So they're called Word docs these days, but it was really leveraging the functionality of websites, HTML5, CSS, and web pages, but not really making the most of that functionality, which is my opinion. So I had the thought about, okay, surely there is a platform out there that allows me to generate microsites and pitch sites that we can then use to send out proposals. So that's exactly what we went into the market looking for, and Qwilr was what we found. And I'll share our experience now for our lawyers. So let me share my screen. This is our Salesforce instance. What I might do is I'll actually share what the customer sees first. So we've gone from that Word document, and now we get this. So it's dynamic, responsive. The customer can go in and they can select what pricing option they want, and just hit accept. Simple as that. So many benefits have come out of this. I mean, I brought up this to share in preparation for this, but look, I mean, we get a quick little notification when someone's opened our Qwilr. That tells us that the customer's engaged with us. There's plenty of analytics that sit behind this as well. Like what we noticed is that a lot of our customers were accepting this from a mobile device. So the document is completely mobile responsive. They go in, they accept it from there, and we can actually see how long they spend reading it, right? So we can see the type of customers that don't spend a lot of time reading it. What that tells us is that maybe this document isn't an important piece of the sales cycle. Maybe all of the conversations that we've had before that is what's important and what's converting the customer. We see customers who pass this document around. So similar to Charlie's use case, they're sharing it with their CFO, CEO for approval. They're then sharing it with procurement and so forth. And we understand, like, okay, well, these are the type of customers that need a bit more meat in these type of documents, and this document is more influential as part of that sales cycle. So this is the experience for our customers, and from the lawyer perspective, creating it is really easy. This is what I've created here, but this is our Salesforce CRM. All the data has already been put in, and all you need to do is just hit create new in Qwilr, select the template. There you go. That's created the page. It's already populated all of the client details in here as well. So all of this is already pre-populated from the data in Salesforce. So to that piece I mentioned earlier about having the best systems and getting them to talk to each other, we didn't want to have data being passed around and re-entered into different systems. So that's what we were able to do with Qwilr. So now it's a really quick, simple process. There's no more fiddling around with tables and word formatting and stuff for our lawyers. They can go in, change all of the pricing. They can even add from a list of saved items on here as well. And yeah, it's completely intuitive, and we are I guess marketed as one of Australia's most innovative law firms. Using a Word document and sending customers PDFs to sign wasn't good enough for me if that's what we were going out the market with. So yeah, I guess that's us.
That's awesome, mate. That's awesome. And I think so I suppose just one that is an interesting one. It's like, how did adoption go? Because sometimes you go, there's a fear from people who at some firms sort of sometimes we will hear an objection that we handle sometimes is like, oh, this is great, but like we've got lawyers, they'll never adopt this, like they'll never use Salesforce, or they'll never use this, or we've got like an enterprise sales team who like, oh, they can barely use DocuSign, they'll never use this, they'll never da. Like, how did adoption go internally?
Yeah, for us, we have a pretty systematic change management process. So, and for me, the secret to change management is just a lot of touch points, right? So we flagged at the start that we were reviewing this process. We flagged the direction with everyone that this is where we're heading with. We flagged that this Qwilr solution is up and coming. We then did a training session with everyone before it launched. We rolled out with Qwilr champions in each team so that the team members can ask those people the questions as well. But ultimately, we were lucky with Qwilr. Salesforce was a bigger it was a bigger beast to conquer from a change management perspective. But the theme of Qwilr is that it just made that experience a lot easier for everyone, right? So going from a Word document, copying it, changing it, modifying it, sending it, and then putting it into Adobe Sign, converting it to PDF, to just clicking a few buttons, getting most of the design elements right already. The lawyers can just focus on what is valuable to them, which is the content and the pricing. Ultimately for us, we got really good adoption. I mean, it's 100% adopted, right? So we got good adoption just because the user experience was a lot simpler for both the lawyer and the customer.
Yeah, and I think like really, I mean, like just on my side, I think like, look, I mean, this is massively self-serving from my side, but it's very cool to see two quite different use cases, right? Like you both have your own sales process, but Nam's like obviously got pricing in there, got an accept e-sign flow. But on the flip side, Charlie's like very detailed customer case studies, linking out to more stuff. Like, how do we sort of handle those sort of things? And I think others in the chat sort of said like, Adam said, we use Qwilr for non-sales purposes as well. Like it can be quite versatile in how you do it. At the end of the day, as you say, Nam, it's like it's a little microsite that allows you to sort of like do some quite flexible things. So. Charlie, I've got a question. I've got a couple of questions for the folks, and then please feel free to add some more questions. There are some questions earlier that we'll answer now as well. But I've got a question for Charlie that's come in, which is, so Charlie, you mentioned that the sales cycle has shortened slightly. Like what impact has the CCJ had on like customer engagement and like the ability to sort of actually stick with a customer throughout the sales cycle? That sort of makes sense.
I think one of the things it does, so having worked at Salesforce, which is probably one of the best sales organizations in the world, right? They're quite good at that sort of stuff. And learning the levels of discipline that people have around particularly the concept of next steps and the trouble you get in from your VP of sales if your next step has not got a date in the future and who's going to do it and what it is. Trying to have that kind of discipline anywhere else, you just kind of spoil, right? Because no one else does it that way. What the CCJ does for us is it actually just makes the next step in the journey really obvious for both the customer and our BD person. So, and then they've always got something that they can go back to. So so that the customer's not scurrying around trying to collate, emails and information. They go to one link and it's all in there for them. So I think that's good. And then it's definitely helped remove this fear of screwing up or fear of messing up, which in itself can really shorten the sales cycle because it's much easier for them to get to the decision point if the decision point is documented.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we want to get to this. It's kind of like bringing the RFP experience that everyone hates to the small customer in a way that they don't hate it. Right, that's what we want to do with it. So,
yeah, I think just one thing that we've been thinking about a lot inside Qwilr of late is just like is I think it's nice on both those sides. It's like how do you when the document gets passed around internally to different people, how do you almost allow them to choose their own adventure? Like rather than having like, you know, like a 50-page PDF that answers every question, but you've got to go through it all sequentially, you can within Qwilr have like little fold out accordion sections. You can link off to other pages. You can do stuff like that. A thing that we've been seeing quite a rise in is like people embedding Gong calls. So obviously if you're using Gong for sales call recording and analysis, you can do snippets of the call. And so if you've gone in and done a demo for some part of the team, maybe you've demoed for 3 people, there's probably 3 or 4 others who would sort of be interested in that. You can just do a snippet of that call, embed it in Qwilr, you know, fold it away. It doesn't have to be front and center. But again, it can be the case that, oh, the CFOs come in, they can watch that call at 1.5x, that demo rather, just like the part of the call, it's a demo and whatever else. And it's like, you know, again, you can use Loom or whatever else. It's a very interesting way of sort of like, again, like, how do you show the right things to the right people here?
Yeah.
There was a tech question earlier, which was just a little bit about Qwilr focus to just answer quickly. And then any other sort of final questions here, please fire them through. So the question was, are there any security measures in place to protect our sales related data and sensitive information within Qwilr? So yes, so that there's 2 sides to this. Obviously Qwilr, like we have our own security team internally that takes security very seriously. And you know, a bunch of the things that Charlie showed off there around various certifications. We actually don't have 27001, which Charlie has, so props to Charlie. But I think like but we are on a journey towards all of it, like that certification as well, frankly. But we've got a team internally who is like very focused on, you know, Qwilr's obviously like security and integrity on that side. And have like a great, you know, Alton leads that team, who's you know, as our security professional. But on the Qwilr side, one of the big things that we sort of, you can do with the web that's like really, I think, interesting in this space is these web pages are kind of live and in your control. And so if you send out a PDF, that is, or any other file, that's gone. Yes, you can password protect it to some degree, but actually really and truly, it's like, you know, that can be, you know, altered or changed or, you know, sort of sent out around in various ways. You know, with a Qwilr page, you can have, you know, there's a whole host of things that we have to say like, hey, you need a password to enter this page. That password's dynamic, so you can update it anytime. You can obviously take a page offline whenever you want to take a page offline. You can do things like you have to log in to view the page. You can say things like this page is only going to be available for charlie@wiise.com, or you could say it's only available to people who have the URL wiise.com in their email. And so anybody inside that organization would be able to log in. Anybody outside there would have a fail on that side. And again, you can use things like Google SSO to enforce that. You have analytics behind that to sort of give you an idea of like, you know, who actually is viewing those things. And again, if you see some wonky viewing patterns, you know, I don't know, hypothetically, you've got a competitor that's in the Gold Coast and, you know, you're selling to a customer in Victoria, and all of a sudden you get all these views from the Gold Coast come in. You can take that page offline, other sort of things like this, in a way that's just not possible in this sort of pre-web world. And you know, there's a whole bunch of other things you can do as well. We can go a lot deeper on this about IP restrictions and all that sort of stuff. But you know, again,
I actually think it's a better process, right? So the rule for us is we don't share anything in that document that the customer hasn't either openly shared with us or we wouldn't share via email, right? And if you I think if you use that maxim, then, because you know, an email can always be forwarded, right? Once you've sent that email, you've got no idea where that's going, right? And if the customer sent it you, they don't either, really. So we never put deep PII in there. We never put any financial information. There's never anything which, you know, is commercial in confidence there. So that's, I mean, we're very, very clear on that, but it does help that I've got one investor and it's KPMG, just happens to be an audit firm, right? So this is also why we've got ISOs and compliances, you know, bigger than our boots right now, is because we have to treat even the smallest ships chandlers up in Brisbane as if they were an ASX 100 audit client, right? So yeah.
So Tessa asked a question about whether you get 100% positive responses from customers. So Nam sort of answered this to some degree. I mean, Charlie, have you had any sort of thing on this side? I can give an anecdotal thing from Qwilr after you're done. But yeah, Charlie, what's been your view?
Look, I don't think we've ever had anybody saying they don't want to use it. I think people sometimes just don't use it, but that's maybe because they're not in the buying mode, or we've not had anybody say don't put that stuff in there for us. We don't want that because otherwise you're doing it in email anyway, right? Trying to curate the same journey and generate the same level of engagement. So yeah, I guess it's always been positive. And the only negative would be non-engagement, and that's probably more to do with the sales process or cycle anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think on that sort of website, that sort of web side, we started this company, it's been sort of, 9 years now since the very, very early days when it was just Dylan and I sitting on his couch in his house in Darlinghurst. And look, in the early days, there was a bit of pushback. It would be like, oh, like, it's a website, like it was a little bit funny. And look, we've always supported export to PDF as well. So you can always send that out. And a thing that we sort of measure on our side here is in the early days of Qwilr, something like 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 Qwilr pages were exported as a PDF. And today it's more like 1%. So 1 in 100. Now that's still like, that's obviously there are still customers out there who are like, hey, can you send me a PDF, or for whatever reason they want to have it the old fashioned way. And that is totally fine. And that's going to be acceptable. But I think the real benefit you get from Qwilr, obviously, if you export as a PDF, is the interactive pricing part going to work? No. Is the video going to play? No. Is the link to the case study going to work? Of course not. So I think I think you don't get that full benefit there, but again, you need to support that backwards compatibility. But again, I would say, at the moment, the world is more and more comfortable with the web, and it is moving down that sort of path. And okay, I think we've got one, maybe another final question here. So if attempting to give a prospective client a quote for finance or a piece of equipment that requires some rather complex calculation, how can Qwilr either solve those calculations? So listen, I'd be very happy to introduce you to someone on our team who'd be happy to sort of take you through the full complexity that we can handle. We can handle like relatively complex stuff, but to a certain level, if it does go, there's like, A times B divided by C to the power of X, whatever else, like I think that can get a bit complicated. So that just might be easier to display as like, you do the calculations elsewhere, and then it's sort of displayed as a final price here. We have an ROI calculator in Qwilr, which allows for full, like it's just any algebra that you can do around that type of stuff there will work. It's fully, like you can do anything on there at all, really. And so that can be a way to sometimes get around some of that complexity. But also, we've got really complex firms who have quite complex pricing using us. We also have firms who do really complex pricing, like in a CPQ, using us as the front end. So the way to sort of display the sort of final price and make it sort of clean on that sort of side there. Romeo asked about track and measure. I think both Nam and Charlie have spoken to this. You can track the engagement and the views of Qwilr pages. You can understand who's viewed it if you've turned on identity on that side. You don't have to, but you can also still be like, hey, how many times has this been viewed? We push notifications out to you on the first view. We also push that notification into tools like Salesforce or HubSpot or Zoho's CRM or Pipedrive, and there's more CRMs to come. And so I think on that side, the big thing though that we're working on right now is we've just launched this new pipeline velocity report. So we're sort of now getting into a new layer of depth, and there's some really very exciting things coming around tracking and understanding and measuring the engagement of your Qwilr pages and allowing you to have a very quick view and understanding of which ones are highly engaged with and which ones aren't. And I think in future, we sort of envisage this space where, some sales teams are very much like, show me the engaged documents. I want to go work them and close them. Whereas other teams are kind of like, hey, the engaged documents will kind of close by themselves. Show me the disengaged ones. That's where I want to spend my time and effort and energy and things like that. And I think there's some exciting stuff to track. Like you can already do this today, but it kind of requires you to go and look at each doc and do a bit of brain processing. And we're going to make that incredibly simple and easy to surface to reps, to sales managers, and to sales leaders / CEOs as well. So we're sort of very excited on that side. Have you ever seen startups struggle to get everything integrated? I'm going to throw this to Charlie, who runs a startup, and Nam, who's sort of in a sort of professional services startup. I mean, when you sort of look at that, do you think this is going to be too hard for some startups, Charlie, or how do you think about that?
Well, it's pretty easy, right? So we turned on the option to have it running out of HubSpot, and we sort of half use it. It's very straightforward. Depends on the tech that you use. I mean, I recently did a whole RevOps project where it sounds a bit like Nam. I just replaced everything that we use as systems, tools, processes, billing, CRM, and everything, just to make it easier, right? I think it's easy sometimes. You end up with a bit of a petting zoo of technology that gets pretty fragmented, and then complexity is the curse. But I think with Qwilr, it just seems really straightforward. You can build it out to usefulness and standalone, and then you can opt to plug it into stuff and into your processes as you need it. Really, so kind of makes
Nam,
sense.
do you have any thoughts on that side?
Yeah, look, I mean, for us, integration was key, and we actually scoped out the integration piece and how it would work before we even signed on for Qwilr, right? So, it wasn't an issue for us, and yeah, that was largely due to that research that we did, but also our particular use of technologies, as Charlie mentioned, right? Depends on the technology you're using. I can speak for Salesforce. It's been super easy journey to get it implemented. We have end-to-end workflows that run off it from within Salesforce. So when a Qwilr page gets accepted, a bunch of stuff gets created within Salesforce, and a bunch of data gets put into our CRM. So for us, it wasn't even a major challenge or issue, really.
I mean, I'd say from our side, there's sort of two views we have here. One is we have about 100 to 150 companies self-serve into Qwilr each month. So they sign up, they try, and they buy each month, and they set up themselves. They don't have, I mean, look, obviously we've got a wonderful customer support team they can reach out to. We've got great help docs and guides and whatever else, but they're basically doing that zero touch from us. And if you're a larger customer, where we have companies who have 200, 300, 400 salespeople in their orgs who use this. Like, we have you don't have to be that large. If you've got 5 or 10 people in your org, you can also, come and work with us on this side. We've got a wonderful customer success team who sort of work on onboarding, implementation, and can sort of help you get started on that side as well if you need a bit of a helping hand to get going. Okay, we're running out of time. We've got a couple of final questions here. So Peter says he operates a labor hire business, and his sales proposals often have big tables of hourly rates. This is perfect. I mean, like professional services and hourly rates, Peter, we can, this is our bread and butter. We've got heaps of people who sort of use this for that in very complex ways. I'm sure we can find a nice solution for you there. And then just one final question. Romeo, that's a big question. I could talk for an hour and a half about that question, about how can Qwilr benefit your sales teams. I think to be honest, so I'd say there's the stuff that we're doing around measuring the sales velocity and sort of bringing that analysis to like different types of proposals, to different templates, to allow some degree of like A/B testing across templates is stuff we're really excited about. But generally speaking, Qwilr is a tool for sales teams. Like we work with 4,000 plus companies, the vast majority, not all of them, but the vast majority are with their sales team. All right, last one. Charlie and Nam, you could give one piece of advice to people. It very much does not need to be Qwilr related, but just something, if you're on that journey, they're sort of looking to modernize their sales process, looking to think about it. It could be to read a book. It could be to sort of, have a think about the customer journey, which has been an interesting theme throughout here. Anything at all. If you've got one piece of advice to someone who's on that journey of trying to modernize their sales process, what would it be? And I'm going to throw to Nam first this time.
Yeah, probably about the only thing I'll say that's not a Qwilr plug today, but don't start with a solution. So don't start with something like a Qwilr or a Salesforce and ask where does it fit into the picture. Start with the use case or the use cases, and then start to look at the themes in the technology. So for us, the theme was web pages, right? Big theme right now is AI, and do your research in terms of what options are there available, and then how do they meet your use case.
Yeah,
fantastic. Great. Charlie.
So similar for us, where I started the conversation is we didn't set out to implement Qwilr, we set out to try and solve a problem. So I guess the advice is really understand what problem it is you're trying to solve, and then experiment with lots of things really quickly. And then once you find something that looks like it's going to be good for you, like dive in and go the final yards on it. because it takes a bit of time. Takes you a little bit of time to get it right and get all your content just right. And it makes your marketing a bit better as well, which is good.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for today. Thank you, everybody who joined us. You've stuck the full hour. We appreciate it. It's been very, very good. So I just a digital round of applause for our wonderful guests, Charlie and Nam. Thank you both so much. Thank you everyone who's joined for those wonderful questions. We've really enjoyed it. We're going to send around, this will be a recording that we'll send around as well. So please feel free to forward on to any colleagues or friends you might find relevant. And hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Nam. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mark. Charlie.